There's nothing new under the sun. This saying originates from the book of Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament and dates from somewhere between 450 and 180 BCE. Certainly after the return from exile in the Neo-Babylonian Empire after the latter was conquered by Persia. The full verse reads approximately like this, depending on the translation you use. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. The book is basically a meditation on the futility of human life, while at the same time extolling God's wisdom and glory, etc. Scholars and theologians can't quite agree on whether the book is ultimately optimistic or pessimistic. I lean towards the latter. It seems to me to be a desperate attempt to find meaning within the apparent meaninglessness of life. But be that as it may, is it true that there is nothing new under the sun? Of course, in some respects it's easy to say that this is true. Human beings go on loving and hating, creating and destroying. You may be familiar with another passage from this book that begins, "For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born, and a time to die," etc. You'll probably know this from Pete Seeger's song Turn, 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 which the Byrds made famous. So we go on loving and hating, creating and destroying. Same old, same old. But maybe we find new ways to do these same things. Certainly at the individual human level, it's not difficult to imagine that we experience the same feelings, the same loves and joys and pains as our distant ancestors. But maybe different things evoke these emotions in us now. We probably haven't managed to invent any new vices or virtues, though. But that's at the individual level. But what about the societal level? Human history has always seen periods of great advancement and periods of relative stagnation. It sounds as though the author of Ecclesiastes was in one of the latter periods, when nothing much was going on. We probably live in an age of unprecedented change. But then, people may well have felt that way in previous periods of history too. And I can imagine that sometimes they may have felt that they'd reached the end of progress, that the human race had achieved everything it possibly could. Where could we possibly go from here? But we keep surprising ourselves. So, if we were to pop back in time and pick up the preacher, the son of David, the purported author of Ecclesiastes, from around, say, 500 BCE, and bring him back to our time, what would he think? Would he recognise the world? It would be fascinating to see the world through his eyes. I'm sure he would recognise us as human. Maybe for a moment or two he might think we're gods or demons, but basically I think he'd come to recognise that we're human. But would he be able to distinguish men from women? He certainly wouldn't have the same fashion and stylistic cues. Pants on both men and women might confuse him. Nobody wore them back in his day. Basically, everyone wore a dress of one kind or another. The lack of covering in general might startle him, again, in both men and women. He's probably more used to seeing this kind of thing. He probably wouldn't be surprised by makeup either on men or women. The Israelites were familiar with the Egyptians, and both men and women wore makeup in that culture. Probably wouldn't be particularly surprised or dismayed by different kinds of jewellery either, even piercings most likely. But he probably wouldn't recognise what we are doing or why we're doing it. I suspect that very little of what we're doing would make any kind of sense to him. He would have no frame of reference. He's missing 2,500 years of context. He would recognise eating, of course. But what the hell are you eating, you might wonder. He might recognise music, or maybe not. He might recognise dancing, again, or maybe not. He wouldn't even begin to understand our political and class structure or even our family structures. And I haven't even mentioned technology yet. In a previous video, I quoted Arthur C. Clarke's third law. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. But I don't think this comes even close to expressing the reaction of our imaginary Israelite. I don't think he would identify what we're doing as magic. He would have no idea at all what we were doing. It would be incomprehensible chaos, nothing as mundane and straightforward as mere magic. So I think in a very real sense, since our Israelites' time, everything is new under the sun. I'm not sure he'd believe he was actually still under the same sun. So the world around us has changed so very dramatically during the last 2,500 years, to the extent that it would be completely unrecognisable to the author of Ecclesiastes. And it's changing very quickly even as I speak. I think the big new thing now is robotics and AI. This is a new revolution. It will again transform our world and our society, for better and for worse. Not all, and. We'll find new ways to amplify our best and our worst qualities. Yet under it all, we're still kind of the same, aren't we? We carry the same software, our genes. We have the same hardware. We still have the same basic needs, wants and desires. I think in the end, we're much more like our ancestors than, say, a chihuahua is like its wolf ancestor.